and privileged to speak on behalf of Canadians and the people of my community, Peterborough-Kawartha. Now, before I begin, I would like to take a moment to recognize the life and service of Hazel Hurricane McCallion. She was what all of us inside of this House should aspire to be, which is fierce, fair, and for the people. Rest in peace, Ms. McCallion. You made Canada better. Today we are debating Bill C-35, an act respecting early learning and childcare in Canada. Now, as a mom and as the Shadow Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, I cannot understate the importance and value of affordable, quality childcare. But affordable, quality childcare does not exist if you cannot access it. As a Shadow Minister and critic, it is my job to speak up for all Canadians and point out what is wrong with this bill. It is my job to listen to the frontline staff, parents who are directly impacted by this bill and speak on their behalf. I don't think you'll find a Canadian who doesn't want what's best for their children. But we must acknowledge that it is not the government's job to decide what is best for your child. Rather, it is you, the parent, the caregiver. Every Canadian deserves the choice to choose what works best for their family when it comes to childcare. Every family dynamic is different, and that is what makes Canada, Canada. Our diversity, our culture, and what works for one family may not work for another. We all have different situations, circumstances, and needs. Bill C-35 does not offer choice for families, and in fact, it excludes many Canadians from accessing quality, affordable childcare. This bill speaks exclusively to those who already have a childcare space with a public or not-for-profit childcare operator, but it does not offer anything to families who have been on wait lists for years. It does not offer anything for families who choose to raise their children at home or use a grandparent or access a private or home-run daycare. There is no freedom to choose in this bill, and there is absolutely no mention on how to manage the frontline burnout and labor shortage of childcare providers. Bill C-35 does not solve the problem of the staff shortages and the out-of-control waitlists across this country to access childcare. In fact, this bill does exactly the opposite. It is increasing the demand for affordable childcare and leaving parents with no access. This bill is subsidizing the wealthy instead of prioritizing our most vulnerable families who need childcare. The bill specifically says, enable families of varying incomes to benefit from affordable early learning and childcare programs and services. In a cost of living crisis, why is this Liberal government subsidizing the most wealthy? This message is from Morgan, who sent it to me. And she says, I think my story is pretty common among new parents right now. I have 3 children, 1 in school, and I have to go back to work in February from my latest maternity leave. I've been on a wait list since I was 8 weeks pregnant and still won't have any care for at least another year likely. What am I supposed to do? Just give up my career, my income, my pension, my benefits? I'm not sure how I'm supposed to provide for my family with no income. Many daycares I have reached out to say they have had to shut down some of their rooms, meaning even less childcare spots. Here's another story from an operator in Peterborough, Ontario. She says, we have a child in our preschool program eligible for the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Program, or as many call it, CWELC, who has a sibling in our senior before and after school program who is not eligible for CWELC because of their age. The program, for those who don't know, is only eligible for children under 6. The parent fees for these 2 children are, the preschool child is $19.85 a day for up to 10 hours of care. We are open 7:30 to 5:30. This fee includes a hot lunch prepared by our cook, as well as 2 snacks each day, also prepared by our cook. Senior before and after school child pays $24 a day for a maximum of 3 hours and 45 minutes. This includes 1 snack per day. She goes on to ask, where is the equity in this? Families who have children over 6 are not entitled to CWEL program fee reduction fees, and therefore are paying more for under 4 hours of care than are families who are entitled to a full day of care without a hot lunch and 2 snacks. Now, this example points out one of and many of the flaws in the bill. For one, what about parents who work shift work, or who are entrepreneurs, or who work weekends? Where can they take their kids for childcare? Secondly, how does this bill create more spaces when this childcare operator who's written this letter is located in a school and there is physically no more spaces to put in the school? Also, how does this bill help with the labor shortage? There's no labor strategy in this bill. Matthew Lau's synopsis of this bill and the Liberals' failed attempt at childcare is spot on. He writes, "The challenges are the same across the board. There aren't enough qualified staff to keep all existing childcare centres running at full capacity, let alone staff new spaces." Bill C-35 has nothing in it to fix these problems. Andrea Hannon is the Executive Director of the Association of Daycare Operators of Ontario, ADCO, and gives many examples of what we can expect with this Liberal flawed bill. Taxpayers and the families who use the program will wind up paying more and more for it, while all children will wind up getting less and less. This bill is like most Liberal policy. It says a lot of really nice things, but it gives zero details on how any of these nice things will be delivered or how they will be achieved. The Liberals love to promise unrealistic expectations and then act shocked when they can't achieve them. They also love to tell taxpayers to just trust them. Well, after 8 years of this Prime Minister and seeing how badly Canadians are suffering, we don't trust them. The Financial Accountability Office of Ontario says there is a committed shortfall of $1.2 billion in 2026-2027 based on the minimum federal and provincial commitment. We've barely started, and you can already see there is no sustainability plan here. Here's another quote. "There's been a giant frustration in Alberta about the lack of communication. Everybody doesn't know what's going on and doesn't know where funding is coming from, doesn't know where they're going to get the money." That's from Susan Cake, the chair of Childcare Now Alberta, an advocacy organization. I want to take a minute right now. This is very important to listen to, because as you may have heard earlier, the minister talks about how this is such an advancement for feminism. This bill does exactly the opposite. This is feedback from the Association of Alberta Childcare Entrepreneurs. And this is what she has to say. "The majority of private childcare in Alberta is operated by women, with a large number being immigrant women. The impact of this agreement and the intention of the federal government to prioritize the business model of childcare rather than the affordability, accessibility, or quality of care is having the opposite effect on women. We are seeing a woman-led industry targeted and pushed out of business. Women across our province are facing bankruptcy and losing their homes because they signed into this agreement because they wanted and advocated for affordable childcare. It has also created a 2-tiered childcare system. A great example of this is from one of our directors who has a centre in Grand Prairie. She had a wait list of over 400 families, so she decided to expand even though she understood the new spaces wouldn't have access to the affordability program. So now, in her centre, she has her original 120 spaces with families paying an average of $13 a day and 86 new spaces with families paying an average of $65 a day in the same centre getting the same care. This is an unintended consequence of this program." She goes on to write, "You also have new centres who are sitting empty. They are fully operational and licensed, but because of their choice to be a private operator, they can't access subsidies for families. There are centres who have wait lists of 100 families, but only 4 children attending because the other families need the subsidy and can't access it in that centre. These women who have invested their savings and taken the initiative to open a centre and meet the needs of their community are going bankrupt. They likely have signed a 10 to 20-year lease with a personal guarantee of their family home and assets, but the federal government is restricting them from having access to a fair market to operate their business. The message this sends is that the choice of these parents doesn't matter, and that these women are collateral damage to meeting this Liberal campaign promise and an NDP coalition. As the Association of Alberta Childcare Entrepreneurs has pointed out, we must have private childcares alongside public and not-for-profit centres to meet the demand and to offer the choice to fit what is best for families. But the language and intention of this bill clearly leaves private childcare operators in the cold. Here's the exact language from the bill. Facilitate access to early learning and childcare programs and services, in particular those that are provided by public and not-for-profit child providers. How do you expect to meet the demand without private operators? You can't. We need them. And yet this bill clearly leaves out any representation from private operators on their national council. What does that say? It says the same thing the Liberals always say. We will decide what's best for you. We will decide how to spend your money. We will decide who represents you at the table. We do not believe in fair market, and we do not believe in the freedom of choice. It is not right. It is not good leadership, and it is not a good long-term strategy for our country. Ontario's Financial Accountability Office projects that by 2026, there will be 602,000 children under 6 whose families will want $10 a day daycare, but the province will only be able to accommodate 37,000 of them. That leaves 38% of children without access. And government estimates also suggest that by 2026, there could be a shortage of 8,500 early childhood workers. In British Columbia, 27% of childcare centres turn away children due to a lack of staff. One director who oversees 13 childcare programs with 350 spaces says that in the past 2 years, we've had to close programs temporarily, whether it's for a day or two or shorten hours for the week. In Peterborough, we have 4,200 licensed childcare spaces with our city and county. There are 3,500 on the wait list. Frontline burnout is hurting our entire economy and contributing to our mental health crisis. So is not being able to access quality childcare. When the minister says more women will be able to go to work, she's misleading Canadians. You cannot go to work if you don't have access to childcare. You cannot help our labor shortage if there is no daycare spots available. They will tell you that they're going to create more spaces, but give zero details or plan on how they are going to achieve that. Bill C-35 does not solve these problems. It is not a childcare strategy. It is a headline marketing plan. Women are rethinking having children because of the cost of living crisis and because there is just no access to childcare. I have many women who put their name on the wait list before they're even pregnant, and now they have toddlers with no indication if they will ever get a childcare spot. Accessing quality childcare is one of life's greatest stressors. Any mom or parent watching this knows leaving your child with somebody is the ultimate stressor in life. Parents need choice on who to leave their child with. It is an indescribable stress. Parents deserve access to quality childcare, but more importantly, our children deserve access to quality childcare. If we are not invested in the welfare of our children, then what is our future? Children are our future. They are our most precious resource, and this bill does not put children first. It's a marketing plan. Here is Meredith's story. I've been on a wait list for 21 months for my 21-month-old son since the day he was born. I've never come off it, nor have I received notice that I'm going to be at the top of any list, let alone some of the choices I feel would best suit our family's needs. I'm now pregnant with my second, and have already registered this baby on the list in hopes of having more success next time. I've spent countless hours on Facebook groups, asking friends on paid service websites, trying to find adequate care. It's sad to me because I thought I would be choosing the center provider that best suited our needs as a family. But it would appear that we are being forced to just accept whatever we get. I've also heard from friends who applied strictly for part-time care who have gotten calls from centers that only accept full-time spots. This makes me question how many people are taking up spots on a list for full-time when in reality they only require part-time care. This seems like a simple issue to fix in the application process. In Facebook groups, I see posts every single day of mothers and fathers desperately seeking care as their time on leave has run out, and they still don't have a reliable option. I consider myself lucky. I decided to leave my job after maternity leave and start my own business because I don't feel I will ever be comfortable leaving my children wherever I get to the top of the list. This has presented its own challenges as a full-time parent and a full-time entrepreneur. But at least I'm not desperately seeking care, left between feeding my family and staying home to care for my children. She goes on to say, this entire thing breaks my heart, as I also think that while there are certainly many dads highly involved in the search for care, it ultimately seems to fall on women who are now being forced to leave their careers and remain home with their children, despite wanting to return to the workplace. It's really unfortunate when you can't be present with your children because you're so stressed out on whether or not you're going to be able to find childcare so that you can go back to work, because you don't have a choice, because you have to go back to work to pay for food because of inflation, because of the cost of living crisis. And again, in poor planning alongside not providing clear communications in details on this ideologically driven bill, we have reports coming from childcare centers explaining parents are being charged an extra fee because, as everyone watching knows, the cost of food has skyrocketed after 8 years of this Prime Minister. As reported by the Globe and Mail, government's daycare budgets didn't account for inflation, and it's affecting how kids are being fed. Ashley Collins, co-chief executive officer of Compass Early Learning and Care, which operates 40 childcare programs across Canada, estimates they've had to increase their food budget by up to 10%. She says, there's so many multifaceted things we need to do from an operational level. Make sure that food can continue, but also our staff being able to make sure we're still putting money into increasing wages, she said. Compass programs will continue to look for sales on food and adjust menus accordingly rather than cut food offerings or add them as an extra fee, Ms. Collins said. She says, how unfortunate would it be that centers are feeling like they have to add that extra fee at a time when fees are supposed to be going down? There is so much wrong with this bill, and I can't stress enough, Conservatives believe in equal choice, freedom of choice for quality, affordable childcare. Everybody wants that. But this bill is flawed, and simply listening to parents, childcare operators, and the frontline workers should have been the knowledge needed to fix it. You just need to listen to the people who are impacted by this to know what not to do. But clearly the Liberals believe that Ottawa knows best. Conservatives know Canadians know best, not Ottawa bureaucrats. We are elected to serve the people, and service means listening and doing something that is better, not worse. There are concrete policy decisions that can help families. Affordable and quality childcare is critical, but if you can't access it, it doesn't exist. It is great that we are having this conversation. It is great that we are recognizing how important affordable and quality childcare is, but this bill falls very short on achieving results and details in providing equal opportunity for families to access quality, affordable childcare. Because we have listened to parents, frontline staff, and operators across this country, Conservatives believe we can fix this. We don't want to leave you with no hope. We know how important hope is. We can offer the freedom for families to choose what is best for them. Conservatives will put forth strong amendments to address these glaring shortcomings in this legislation, and ensure all Canadians get access to affordable, quality childcare. Your children are important.
I'm sorry, the time is up. The honourable questions and comments. The honourable Minister of Families, Children and Social Development.
Great, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank my honourable colleague for her speech because she pointed out for the past 20 minutes exactly why this bill is important.
That's right.
All of the issues that she raised are issues that have arisen because we didn't have national leadership on childcare. There was no system before, and the system that was there was a patchwork, and it didn't provide the needs for families across this country. Wait lists have existed before, they exist today, but that's why we're committed to creating 250,000 new spaces. But there was no affordability. So this is actually an opportunity for the Conservatives who, if they do truly care about these issues, to join us in supporting this bill.
Right
and
on.
my question to the Honourable Minister is, can we count on her support to improve this for families across Canada? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Peterborough-Kawartha.
Oh, I think I just got called an honourable minister, so thank you for that. Listen, you know, I think the reality is there's nothing in the bill that shows any solutions. Yes, we are addressing the problems. This is what the whole speech was dedicated to do. How are you going to build 250,000 spaces when many of these locations that have daycares physically don't have the spaces? How are you going to increase the labor force? There's no national strategy in this bill. Why is private not represented? Why is there no private at the National Council? Yes, affordable quality childcare is critical, but if you can't access it, it doesn't exist, and this bill doesn't cover it. Thank you.
Questions et commentaires. L'honorable député de Abitibi-Bay.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Bay James Nunavik EU. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for her speech. It's very clear that the vision in the western part of Canada is not the same as in Quebec. We heard about parents wanting to decide, but we need to consider that in Quebec, child care is extraordinary and it really contributes to remarkable child development, also sociologically and educationally. So we heard about private child care. How much will that cost and who will have access to it in the rest of Canada? I would remind the member to address the question through the chair and not directly to her colleague, the Honourable Member for Peterborough-Kawartha.
Question, and it is wonderful to be able to examine Quebec. I think that's really beneficial for a lot of us. You know, sometimes you have to have really hard conversations, and the reality is what we all want, and utopia is lovely, but you have to figure out the cost analysis of everything. And so if it's not a fair market value, absolutely, public, licensed childcare changes some children's lives, especially those children who don't have the option for anything else, especially those children who don't have something at home. This is absolutely critical. But this bill doesn't meet the demand. It's going to increase the demand for wait lists and not close the gap. And so we need that private representation.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and it's always a pleasure to work with my colleague on the Status of Women Committee. But she spoke a lot about the need for for-profit care. And this was a little bit concerning to me because we know research has shown for-profit care is not good for workers and is paid for on the backs of parents and families. I know in Ontario, the PC government has quietly removed some of the profit caps, allowing for the expansion of for-profit care. And we know that this is problematic and is not supported by main national childcare organizations or unions. Childcare Now, Childcare Resource and Research Unit, unions, NUPG, CUPE, Unifor. We see unions backing workers. The NDP has always been the party of workers, and unions are saying we need public, not-for-profit care. I'm wondering, does the member believe that federal funds should be used to expand, as she indicated clearly, for-profit care at the expense of public non-profit care, something that has been supported by unions and national child care organizations across the country? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member of Peterborough-Kawartha.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleague. Yes, it is a pleasure to work with her on the status of women. You cannot meet the demand without both sectors, and every stakeholder will tell you that. So you cannot access quality, affordable childcare if it doesn't exist. But I think the key here is that I think what I would pull out of that comment, which is concerning, is that many of these private-run daycares are women. So to say that it's hurting the work, these are women who are trying to make a living, trying to provide for their family by offering daycares, who are opening access to their community. So we need to come to the table and find a solution here, because cutting them out is not fair. It's not equal access.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? The honourable member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Yeah, you got it. I'm just waiting for a cam. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for her question. And you really did hit the nail on the head when you said, how can we create more spaces if we don't have the labor force to back that up? And I hear that in rural Canada, Madam Speaker, in my riding, where mothers, parents, they're waiting and waiting and waiting on lists for years to find childcare, but this bill doesn't address the shortage of childcare in rural Canada. So I'm wondering if my colleague can if she would comment on this, on what kind of a strategy that Conservatives would do to help families who are in need of childcare across this country, especially in the rural areas of Canada.
The honourable member of Peterborough-Kawartha.
Thank you so much, and thank you to my colleague for the question. It's absolutely right. I mean, there's this promise, this wild promise of 250,000 childcare spaces, and I haven't heard one detail on how that's going to be achieved. Not one. It's certainly not in the bill. So I think if you sat down and you listened, especially to these places that have no more space, right? So what are we going to do? Well, the private and area is critical. You cannot meet the demand without both. You have to have equal access. You have to have fair access. Parents need to be able to choose. And then we need to figure out the labor strategy. There's no mention of a national labor strategy in this bill. And until that's addressed, this problem is not going to go away. It's going to get worse. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm actually disappointed in the Conservative Party. Here we have a very progressive policy for the children of our country. An opportunity for the Conservatives to reverse a position they had taken in the last election, where they said that they would get rid of the childcare program. A childcare program that has been signed off by provinces and territories. It's an opportunity for Canadians to actually have affordable childcare. This legislation that we are voting on today isn't meant to provide the details that the member is looking for. Look at the agreements. It's in the agreements, Madam Speaker. It's the framework. Why is the Conservative Party sticking to their election platform and throwing out a national childcare program when, in fact, this is the type of program we should all be supporting? They're the only party in the chamber that's voting against this legislation.
The honourable member for Peterborough-Kawartha has 1 minute to respond.
Well, I think he was listening to a different speech, Madam Speaker, because nowhere did we say we're throwing it out, and nowhere did we say we were voting against it. Thank you.
We have time for a very brief question. On a le temps pour une très...
Time for a very brief question. The honourable member for Berthier-Maskinongé. A very brief question. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Listen, I listened to my colleague's speech, and there were a lot of objections
We'll be able to hear the question if there is conversations going on with the government on the other side at the same time. So I would ask her maybe to listen to the question so she'll be able to answer it. The honourable member,
The honourable member for Berthier-Masquinongé, a brief question, please. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I see that you see that I'm getting better at speaking while others are speaking. That's 3 years of MP training for you. Listen, I listened to my colleague's speech, and she raised a lot of doubts and questions, but has she observed the progress that we've had in Quebec after the daycare program was put in place? You know, private, public, yes, there are still private daycares in Quebec. That still exists, and there are still tax credits. But in the government daycares, there's an educative program. And, Madam Speaker, I had the privilege of participating in the creation of the CPE network in Quebec, and I would ask her to consider that. And I think it's important not to throw out the baby with the bathwater, as we say. It's important to vote for this bill and work to improve it. I'll give her the opportunity to answer. I'd ask for a brief question.
for Peterborough-Kawartha, a brief answer, please.
Thank you to my colleague, and I guess I need to be clear. I'm not throwing out the baby. We're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, but it is also really important to see the shortcomings that have happened in Quebec and how many people are still on a wait list. So how do we improve? How do we do better, right? That is what we need to focus on for solutions, because yes, quality, affordable childcare is critical for our country, but we need to also recognize that we need solutions to it. Thank you.
Reprise.
Resuming debate.
L'honorable.
The honourable member for Abitibi Bay James Nunavik EU.